Today's guest is, of course, a very famous Mr. Joji Morishita. He is a commissioner, Japan's commissioner to the International Whaling Commission, IWC. This issue of Japan's scientific whaling became a hot issue in March when, as you know, Australia sued Japan at the ICJ. The decision was Japan must halt its Southern Ocean whaling activities. So we all wanted to see what the next step is for Japan. It was just actually 2 days ago, Prime Minister Abe made a remark at the Diet that he basically said he will work hard to get international understanding for the resumption of commercial whaling.
ICJ decision was made on the last day of March, and as the day passes, I feel like now that that ICJ decision is actually good for Japan. Before I actually go into the detail about ICJ decision, I think I need to talk about many gaps in the whaling dispute. Most famous one is so-called the commercial whaling moratorium that was adopted in 1982, so more than 30 years ago. And for many people, the commercial whaling moratorium is a decision by the world or by the IWC to prohibit whaling, or many people think that the moratorium or adoption of a moratorium has established a particular perception that whaling is something bad, or the world does not accept whaling anymore. This is the actual language which established the commercial whaling moratorium in 1982. Notwithstanding the other provision of paragraph 10, this is a schedule, catch limits for the killing for commercial purposes of whales from all stocks, shall be 0. So the catch limit is set 0 by this decision. So if you read this straight, first of all, you might recognize that this particular wording is not saying that whaling is a bad thing, or commercial activity is a bad thing, or whaling is prohibited. The first part of this language only says the catch quota will be 0. And by 1990 at the latest, so in almost approximately 10 years after the adoption, there should be a comprehensive assessment of a scientific situation or scientific knowledge about whale stocks. And based on that scientific activity, the IWC now consider modification of this paragraph and also consider a catch limit other than 0. So this is actually a provision setting forth the process of resuming the whaling. At least you can read like this. So if the enough scientific evidence is collected, there are room for the resumption of whaling. As you can see, this language is asking for a comprehensive assessment based upon the best scientific advice. The reason for the adoption was uncertainty in science. Logical conclusion is to conduct science, to collect more data. And that was the reason for Japan to initiate scientific whaling. Whaling is not illegal under this language. Whaling is not totally prohibited. Whaling is not totally prohibited permanently. It's more of a process set forward by the International Whaling Commission to the possible resumption of whaling. At least that's a possible interpretation of this language. as I said at the beginning, the ICJ decision's public perception is the ICJ decision prohibits now scientific whaling, or some headline says whaling is denied. So that could be understood as the total denial by the highest court of law of whaling activities itself. But I will show you some provisions or some paragraphs in the ICJ judgment so that to present a actual meaning of ICJ decision. And this is the reason that I now feel that ICJ decision is good for us. Through the course of argument between Japan and Australia and New Zealand, which took 4 years, one of the main argument by Australian government was the convention which established IWC almost 70 years ago is now evolving because the world has changed. So at the beginning, this convention might be for the management of whaling activities. But they argued that now this organization or convention is for the protection of whales. The IWC has decided, or parties to the IWC decided, that to conclude a convention to provide for the proper conservation of whale stocks and thus make possible the orderly development of the whaling industry. And this was the original objective of the organization. And as you can see from the red part, ICJ said amendment to the schedule and the recommendations by the IWC may put emphasis on one or the other objectives pursued by the convention, but cannot alter its object and the purposes. So the purpose of the organization remains. And this is exactly what Japan argued through the 4 years. And that was confirmed. The sales of whale meat after the research activities is always used as a reason that the Japan's scientific research is of a commercial purpose or commercial nature. In the court view, the fact that the program involves the sale of whale meat and the use of proceeds to fund research is not sufficient, taken alone, to cause a special permit, the scientific whaling, to fall outside Article 8. So there's a clear view by the ICJ that selling a whale meat will not or does not mean that activity is a commercial activity. The ICJ judgment reaffirms that one of the purposes of the ICLW is a sustainable exploitation of whale resources. In light of this, Japan has confirmed its basic policy of pursuing the resumption of commercial whaling by conducting research whaling. For the Antarctic Ocean, Japan has decided that we cancel JARPA 2 for this coming season, starting from the winter, Northern Hemisphere winter of this year. We will only conduct a so-called sighting survey, non-lethal activities in Antarctic in the coming season. For the Northwestern Pacific, we have 2 research projects. One is in Antarctic, another one is Northwestern Pacific around Japanese borders. For Northwestern Pacific, second one, we have reduced its scope and size in terms of the number of animals to be taken and in terms of a species to be taken in order to respond to the ICJ decision as much as possible. For the fiscal year 2015, so the year next year and thereafter, we will submit the new research program for the Antarctic, which will reflect the reasoning and conclusion of ICJ judgment. And in accordance with the rules set by International Whaling Commission, we have to submit the draft research plan 6 months before the next scientific committee of International Whaling Commission. And the next International Whaling Commission is probably around May of next year.